Picture yourself standing before an endless desert where the wind carries ancient whispers and the sand holds the footprints of generations who dared to believe. It is in this landscape that the story of Moses begins, not merely as a leader, but as a traveler of the soul. His journey is not only made of spectacular miracles, but of subtle lessons, whispered in silence, echoing through time. Lessons of faith, patience, and the promise that sustains weary hearts. Today, I invite you to walk this path with me, not as distant spectators, but as fellow travelers carrying deserts of our own. For the journey of Moses does not belong only to the past. It is reborn each time a life faces trials, each time a heart clings to a promise yet unseen. Let us open the hidden pages of this story, the ones not always told in sermons, yet engraved in the pauses of God's silence. As we uncover these secrets, we'll see Moses was never truly alone. And neither are we, even when the horizon looks unbearably empty. So take a deep breath, open your mind, and steady your heart. The desert is about to reveal not just the path of a man, but a mirror of your own life. And before we step into the first great lesson, tell me, what has been the greatest desert you've crossed? Share in the comments, and next we will uncover the first key that sustained Moses: faith that defies logic. The faith of Moses did not begin at the Red Sea. It was born long before, in the courage to believe what no one else could see. True faith is not built on evidence, but on trust. It is walking without a map, guided only by a whisper from the unseen. When God spoke through the burning bush, nothing made sense. A fire that did not consume, it seemed madness, not revelation. Yet here lies the lesson. Faith does not need logic to be real. It blooms precisely where logic ends, where the impossible begins. How many times in your life have you stepped forward without guarantees, moving ahead only because something deep within whispered, "Trust even through the pain"? Faith propelled Moses to face Pharaoh, to raise his staff against forces beyond control, not because he was strong, but because he trusted in a strength far greater. And perhaps you too have walked in such faith, unseen, misunderstood, yet unshaken. Faith that no one else could grasp, yet that carried your trembling steps. Tell me, when has your faith had to be stronger than logic? Because next, we will speak of patience, the patience forged in waiting. The desert is not just a place of passage, it is a silent teacher. It was there Moses and his people learned that promises are not fulfilled overnight. Walking under a merciless sun, day after day, felt like endless punishment. But in truth, it was the soul's workshop, where patience was refined. Waiting does not mean standing still. It means walking on, even when no sign of arrival is in sight. Moses knew God's timing was not man's timing. The long, painful waiting was shaping them for something greater. Have you too endured seasons where waiting felt like eternity? Where each day looked like the one before? Hope fading like the setting sun. It is in that emptiness that patience becomes an unseen miracle, teaching us that promises are never lost. They ripen in silence. The desert slows our steps, but never cancels our destiny. Patience teaches us to trust, even when heaven seems silent. Share with me, when have you had to learn to wait? Because next, we'll see how patience is always sustained by God's promise. Moses did not walk the desert just to survive. He walked sustained by a promise greater than the horizon before him. The promise was not only of fertile land. It was proof that God was committed to lead his people into destiny. A promise gives meaning to weary nights and dusty roads. It is the invisible hand that steadies faltering feet. Every step of Moses was an act of trust in this invisible covenant. For God's promises are not measured in human time, but in eternal purpose. And maybe you too have walked, clinging only to a promise of healing, of reunion, of new beginnings, or simply of brighter days. God's promises burn like a flame that no storm can extinguish. They sustain the heart when everything else falls apart. Every promise in God waits for its time to unfold, just as the promised land waited for a people prepared to enter it. Tell me, what promise do you still carry in your heart today? Because next, we face the challenges that rise along the road to that promise. Every promise comes with trials along the way. Moses learned the road to the promised land would not be simple nor short. The people complained, thirst burned, hunger gnawed. Every hardship loomed larger than hope. The true challenge was not the rocks of the desert, but the weight of disbelief. For leading weary hearts is as hard as crossing barren lands. Even after miracles, fear returned. Egypt's chains still tugged louder than freedom ahead. Perhaps you too have walked paths where challenges choked your faith, when every step felt like a battle against giving up. Yet deserts teach resilience, forged in the clash of pain and hope. Each obstacle becomes a hidden teacher, shaping the soul. Moses learned the desert was not only a place of scarcity, but of revelation. For God's presence often shone brightest in hardship. And I ask you, what challenge strengthened your faith instead of breaking it? Because next, we will see how God always provides along the way. In the desert, where nothing grows, God revealed his provision. Water sprang from rock, life from stone. Heaven itself became their table, as manna rained each dawn. Daily bread, fresh as mercy, sustaining body and soul. God's mark is not abundance, but sufficiency. Never too much, never too little. Always enough for the day. Have you too received provision you never expected? Moments when help came from places unseen? For God's provision is more than food or water. It is inner strength, peace in storms, hope in despair. Each dawn Moses woke to God's faithfulness renewed. Even as the journey stretched on, the care never ceased. This is the truth. God always prepares something for the road. Even when our eyes see only sand, he sees the banquet hidden within. Tell me, when did you most clearly feel God's provision? Because next, we'll uncover the greatest force of all, the power of prayer. Moses carried more than a staff in his hand. He carried an invisible, unstoppable weapon, prayer. When people murmured, he interceded. When battles raged, his lifted hands moved heaven itself. Prayer was his strength to endure the weight of leadership. It was the place where God whispered mysteries of eternity. For prayer is not only asking, it is conversing with the eternal. It is turning desert silence into holy encounter. Have you found prayer as your refuge in storms? Moments when simple words became your shield? So powerful were Moses' prayers. Destinies were changed by them. That same power rests still with those who bow their knees. Prayer bridges fragile humanity with divine greatness. It is where the impossible finds its path. And I ask you, what prayer once changed your life, or the life of someone you love? Because next, we will speak of Moses' leadership, still inspiring today. Moses was not only a liberator, but a guide for weary souls. His leadership was born of obedience, of listening to God. He did not choose the path chose him. And in its weight, he learned that true leadership is service, not control. Leading a weary, hungry, fearful people required more than strategy. It required a heart willing to bear burdens not his own. Moses did not walk ahead alone. He walked beside them, sharing their thirst, their fatigue, their failures. Perhaps you too have been thrust into leadership unexpectedly. In family, in work, in moments where others leaned on you. Moses shows us that true leaders do not command, they inspire. They do not demand loyalty, they earn it by example. His leadership earns still as a light for generations. For to lead is to believe in the destiny of those you walk beside. Tell me, who has been the leader who most inspired you? Because next, we reflect on the legacy of Moses, still alive today. Moses' life did not end at Mount Nebo. His legacy traveled far beyond his final breath. He left no palaces, no riches, no monuments. He left something far greater, a legacy of faith and unyielding hope. His lessons burn like a flame that has never gone out. His desert steps echo still as eternal truths for all travelers of faith. His legacy was not only for Israel, but for all humanity. For his struggles and triumphs became symbols for every soul. Perhaps you too carry an unseen legacy from those before you. Words, gestures, examples still alive in memory. The greatness of Moses was not his own, but God's reflection in him. That is why his story lives on across millennia. His legacy reminds us we are not only travelers, we are transmitters of faith. What we live today becomes strength for tomorrow's generations. Tell me, what legacy of faith or hope have you received? Because next, we'll recall the miracles that sealed his journey. Moses' desert was a stage for wonders beyond reason. Seas parting, manna falling, a cloud guiding their way. Each miracle was not just spectacle, it was assurance. A whisper that God walked with them. To the people, these were signs of power. To Moses, they were reminders of faithfulness. Perhaps you too have witnessed miracles, great or small, moments that confirmed you were never alone. Each miracle of Moses tells us God acts in ways unseen. Even the hardest roads hide blessings within them. And perhaps the greatest miracle is not what we see, but what we feel. The quiet certainty that we are upheld. Moses' miracles are not relics of the past. They are invitations to recognize God's hand today. Share with me. What miracle changed your perspective on life? Because next, we speak of courage, where fear turns to faith. Moses faced not only deserts, but storms within. Fears of failing, of not being enough, of bearing a nation's weight. His courage was not the absence of fear. It was choosing to move forward while trembling. Every challenge became a chance for courage, and faith grew with each step taken. Perhaps you too have felt fear pressing in. Yet still, you stepped forward, clinging to trust. Moses teaches us fear is not an enemy, but a companion. Faith blooms when we walk despite it. Every victory, every breakthrough, begins at that moment of trust. When doubt yields to divine calling, courage transforms ordinary steps into world-changing journeys, and ordinary people into timeless leaders. Tell me, when did you have to be courageous, even while afraid? Because next, in our final step, we conclude by gathering all these lessons together. The journey of Moses is more than history. It is a mirror for our own paths, filled with faith, patience, and trials. Every step, every prayer, every miracle reminds us God walks with us, even when unseen. Moses shows us faith that defies logic, patience that shapes time, and courage that conquers fear. He shows us God's promises never fail, though the road may be long and steep. True leadership inspires, prayer strengthens, and miracles, small or great, are signs of care. The legacy of Moses still calls us. What lessons will we carry into our own deserts? Tell me, which lesson of Moses speaks most deeply to your heart? Share in the comments that we may learn from one another. And if this journey spoke to you, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, and walk with us as we explore the epic, the poetic, and the eternal. God bless your life.